and then we can watch people come in into the green room. And sometimes it's just
No one might come, right?
honestly, like every once in a while, we have like a really low night, which is really kind of fun because then
I
it can just be completely ridiculous. And I always forget about the fact that we record these and we share them because a lot of people will watch them later, or a lot of people are like, I haven't finished the book yet. So, and so I'm like, oh, I just embarrassed myself in front of 4 people. And then later I'm like, oh, wait, no, I
got
forgot
some
about
zero.
YouTube. Yeah. Yeah. So
Well, I'm
whatever.
just gonna pretend there's no future. I usually do anyway.
Oh, this is how I live my whole life. Okay, let's see. So I'm going to change my chats to everyone and say hello and make sure the chat is working. And my chat is still a picture of Haley because I don't know how to fix it. Oh, I'm so bad at tech. Yay, people are here. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to give them a minute to get settled, and then we'll get started. Do I have my notes? No, one of these days I'm going to do this professionally. And it's, this is
It won't
not
be
the
as
day.
fun. Then it won't be
Sorry,
as
Deb.
fun. Are you kidding me?
Okay, let's see. And looks like we still got people coming in. We'll give it another couple of seconds. Well, I usually give it about 10 seconds after the last person comes in to start.
Get settled.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let that Chesney hit the right chord.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. It's mainly Diet Coke, just a little bit of rum.
Just the aroma. Yeah.
Just enough to make you feel like you're like a little bit of vacation, just a tiny bit. And let's see. Okay, I think it's starting to slow down. So I think we can get started. So, hello and welcome everyone to our, I don't even know what this is, maybe the 26th monthly, 27th, wait, this is September 30. How old am I? I don't know. Okay, we're way in, y'all. And we are here today to talk to my amazing and lovely friend, Deb Rogers, who wrote this fantastic book, Florida Woman, which I liked so much. I literally wrote the blurb on the arc. So that tells you how much I enjoyed it. So welcome, Deb.
Jenny, thank you so much. Hi.
My goodness. I'm trying to think, when was the last time we talked, like really talked that wasn't just over email? Was it a blog her? It's got to be, right?
It's got to be, right? One of those. I don't know. I'm not good with time. Everything feels like it was yesterday and like 8 decades ago. Too long. That's the answer. Too long.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So it's been at least a decade. So for those of you who I'm sure that there are going to be some who are here who are like, I know who Deb is, and then some who are going, wait, blogging, what? So that's Deb and I originally met a billion years ago when we were both in the blogosphere a million years ago, and both of us came from blogging and then wrote a book. So it's very exciting. And I was so excited to read this. So tell us a little bit about your path when it comes to writing.
My path has sort of been like the people you read about get lost in the woods and helicopters have to come and find them. And they're not quite sure they found the right people. They may have been replaced by aliens. I mean, path, I don't know. I don't had meandering paths to and from writing. So I don't know how to answer that, but blogging was definitely a big part of wanting to do something creative when I was government worker and nonprofit worker. And so I've always wanted to write, and then got to practice with blogging, and then sort of want to try my hand at fiction, tell my story that way. So
Love it.
I really don't know. I don't know how to answer it. It's definitely not a regular path, like go to school and actually learn how to do this thing or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, same. Yeah, I mean,
But
exactly.
that was what was great about blogging, is you could just if you could get someone to help you figure out how to put it on the internet, you could you could do it, which we did.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's weird looking back, and I look at all of the people um that I knew, and how many of them continue to write and continue to have amazing things come out. And it almost makes me wonder how many people are out there right now who have a great voice and great stories in them, but can't find the right way to kind of break in. And I don't know. I don't think TikTok is quite the same thing as, blogging was. I mean, I guess podcasts are kind of similar.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't TikTok, but I don't know. I can't understand these youths. I can't understand. Maybe they see things that I can't even comprehend yet that they're getting out of TikTok. So I'll let them have it.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it either. I will lay down at bed at night, and Haley will come in my room, and they'll pull up their phone, and they'll be like, let me show you the TikToks, because I don't understand it enough. And they'll be like, this is what you would like. And then when I try to do something on, and I don't do TikTok, I have the TikTok like account just so that someone else won't take it. But every time I'm like, oh, I should do this, they're like, you really should not do that. That's not how you do that. That's not. And
Let
they
them have it.
there's these complicated things that I'm just like, and they're like, well, maybe you should set up a Discord of a blah blah blah, or a Substack, and I'm like, I don't know what those words are. You're a baby. And they're like, I'm almost 18. I'm like, oh, all right, I'm a grandma. I don't know. I'm old, I guess.
Not yet.
Anyways. So, okay. Yeah. So I have lots of questions for you, but first, before we begin, I'm going to ask you the ridiculous 5 questions that we ask everybody before we get started.
Okay.
So the first one is, 2 weeks into the zombie apocalypse, where would you be?
Okay, that's not ridiculous. That's important. We all need to have a strategy. Gosh, I think I'd be probably, living in Texas and Florida, we probably might not know it's a zombie apocalypse as soon as everyone else knows. It'd be like, you still be going to the grocery store and you're like, well, why is that woman dressed in half of a towel and the thing that's supposed to be used for a pool floaty? That's not an outfit, but it is for her. So, okay. We might not notice, so it might just be business as usual. I don't know. But I think it would just be business as usual, or in my room. Got through the pandemic, so probably similar. I can't run, so I might go to like a museum, because that's sort of always a strategy. Ever since reading Mrs. Basley Frankweiler as a child, I wanted to there's weapons there, there's food, there's money in the fountain for the vending machines, there's things to enjoy. Like Florida Museum has a big woolly mammoth. I mean, I could just hole up in the museum. So that's an idea. So if I knew it was happening, I'd head for the museum.
I love that. And I also think at 100% it would start in either Texas or Florida. So yeah, we're going to be ground zero. Yeah, absolutely. The second before I say that question, I'm going to say, because I forgot to, you guys, it's real obvious that I forgot to take my ADD meds. I'm so sorry. If you have questions, down on the bottom, so you can chat in the chat, but at the bottom, there's a little thing that says Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in there. I may be asking them as we go through, and yeah, so feel free to do that. Okay. Question number 2 is, what is an underrated book that everyone should read?
Mine. That's what self-promotion is awkward, but that's hard. That's hard because, I mean, what's underrated? I'm not that deeply read. I didn't have English. I'm not an English major. I went to school wanting to be a political activist or something, but and then I just read all over the place. So I don't really know what's underrated. I know I'm always surprised at people who haven't read Sarah Graham. So maybe she's amazing. She's written a Claire DeWitt series, like a mystery series, detective series, but it's really, it's edgy and it's cool. And so I'm always surprised people haven't read her. Like I get obsessed with somebody and read their whole backlist, and I'm like, assuming, so maybe let's go with that. Sarah Grant, Claire DeWitt.
and I've never read her stuff. So perfect.
There we go. Okay, she's underrated. Very underrated.
What is your favorite word if you have one?
Baby.
It's a good word.
What am I supposed to say? A swear word?
No one has. Shockingly enough, I really would have thought someone would have by now.
What's your favorite word?
Tintinnabulation.
Oh, that's a beautiful word.
Isn't it? And it sounds like what it is, the ringing of bells. And every time I hear it, I'm like, tintinnabulation. I don't think I'm even pronouncing it right. But it's one of those words that you read, but don't really hear. And so that's just in my head, that's how it's pronounced.
Have you ever used it like just spontaneously? It happened and it just came out.
I have, and I got a bunch of looks. Yeah.
I love it. That's a beautiful word. I love it, baby. I think it's beautiful to hear. I love it when you just like you're shopping in the South and someone just says, "Here you go, baby," and like they don't know you. They don't mean anything by it. They just, "Baby, here's your thing. Here's your bag." I love that. I love saying it. It's just sweet. It has a lot of solidity to it, but it's also sweet.
Yes.
Baby.
I love it. How do you like your eggs?
Oh gosh, I love eggs. Do you like eggs?
Sometimes.
Is this controversial? Are there?
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's controversial when I ask a vegan. They definitely I was like, oh, they're like,
True,
I
that's
like
true.
them not watered. I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry.
That's true. That's true. But even I've been a vegan and I have fake eggs, you know, the tofu scramble. So I guess so I like that. I make a good omelet, very good omelet. I love a fried egg sandwich. Oh my God, sometimes that will save your life, a fried egg sandwich. But I'm not a big fan of just a fried egg, like by itself on a plate. That's not right. That ain't right at all.
Yeah.
So I guess a fried egg sandwich, if carbs are available. If they're not available, an omelet.
Okay, so settle an argument for me. Fried egg sandwich, should it be on toasted bread or untoasted bread?
Toasted.
Okay, get out. I am the only one, like for real. I honestly thought that everyone ate fried egg sandwiches the way that my mom made them, which is untoasted with mayonnaise. And everybody that I'm like, that's the way I want it, they're like, that's disgusting. What in the world? And I'm like, no, it's so good. That's how.
So much is how you grow up with. That's probably what, yeah. If you grow up with it, that's what will save your life about it. Or if that's what you had when you were hungover or whatever it is that you needed, or a cheat meal when you really needed a cheat meal. It is, a dozen eggs and a loaf of bread that'll get you, feed your fam. So, or chickens of your own, even better.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I'm all about the toast because that's gonna provide the texture to the softness, soak up the yolk, the fried bits. So toast for me. Or biscuit. Oh God, we could forget the book. Let's just figure this egg question out. Why do people worry about the chicken and the egg? We got bigger issues with the egg. But I can make a vegan tofu scramble that with a little bit of curry to make it look yellow, and you'd love it too. So
that sounds delicious.
Yeah.
And
or I'll put it on mayonnaise with white bread.
And I'll be like, it's like I'm home.
You'll be like, almost like home,
I love
baby.
And our last of the 5 questions is, will you be my friend?
Jenny, yes, I am your friend. I'm your friend before, now, and ever.
Okay, good.
Will you be my friend?
Of course. Always.
Yay. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about this amazing, fantastic book. What inspired the story?
Living in Florida. I've lived in Florida for a couple decades now, and I've lived in the woods like the characters in my book, and I've lived in Tallahassee where there's plenty of other corrupt characters. And I think it just interested me to take a, but I've also been on the internet, as you know, a lot, where Florida has a reputation and perceptions, and well, you probably know that coming from Texas, people think they know you. They think they know what kind of person you are. You know, there's a lot of people who are not like that stereotype, but somewhat are, maybe different. So all those things I think kind of played in my mind about it. And led to the story.
Love it. And are there any ways in which you are like the quintessential Florida woman?
I'm majorly screwed up lots of times. I always hope that they didn't either become discovered or I've been led astray by people. I've led people astray accidentally. I've fallen. I'm a typical fall for a cult kind of person. I love ideas and I can see how they could be really good and then maybe not be able to pull it off. Happens a lot of times. So yeah, sure. Absolutely. I've luckily never been busted and gone viral. There's no mugshot, thankfully, yet. I should probably say yet.
Right.
I can relate, and I can really relate to needing a second chance and not being able to pull it together.
So Cindy just said, has anyone ever Googled Florida woman and their birthday? And I have not, but I'm going to right now. And before I get to the next part of this, let's see, December 29th, 1973. Hi, I'm old. Accused of setting his own truck on fire because he wanted to give the deputies something to do.
That's what I'm saying. The zombie apocalypse will be nothing compared to, but that's a kindness in a way, because you keep your government active and involved in the community. So
it's sort of like it's civics in a way.
Everyone has a little bit of a Florida woman inside them. They might live in Connecticut, so it might not hit the papers, but
I almost feel like, definitely like Florida and Texas, there's a lot, there's more crazy than the average, for sure. But I almost feel like it's easier to talk about it if you're in Florida or Texas, just to be like, fuck that up. Whereas maybe in some of the other states, people are just like, don't ever tell anyone about your great uncle who did this thing. And then we're as sick as our secrets, but we're going to keep them forever. And instead we're just like, fuck, I don't know. Like,
that's how it was. And I think we live outdoors maybe a little more, and the heat tends to coax out some out. It's like, what's the point of hiding? You're going to have to take off all those clothes at the beach, so you might as well not hide it in Publix, right? So same thing with behavior. I think things get lived out loud a little bit more as part of it. And I think definitely Florida is, people come here for a second chance. So a lot of the people who end up in Florida are misfits. They're the outcasts or strangelings who ended up keep going farther south. That's why when you go to Key West, it's the weirdest of the weird. It's just like they couldn't even cut it in North Florida, So it's I love that. It's wonderful to me, but that's sort of the explanation. I love it. People have posted their birthday Florida woman stories. I love it. I've had lots of people since the book came out confess to me their Florida woman stories. Like, if I were arrested, this is what my thing would say. Or, I have an idea for a sequel. You probably hear this all the time, even though you don't write fiction, right? Someone wants you to write a story. Like, I have a great idea for a sequel because I did this in 1973 and got away with it. And actually, some of it still might be buried under the pier. It's like, that's your story, baby. I don't know if I'm doing a sequel.
I don't want to take that away from
you. Yeah. Tell me no more, because I don't know statute of limitations. I don't know the law. Yeah.
Oh my God. I think it's also the heat. Like, it's too hot to keep secrets. Like, you're just
too
like,
hot to keep secrets.
Yeah.
That's
the name of your sequel. Too hot.
Too humid,
Like, I just became that person.
Write that down. Right? Where's my little book? Too hot to keep secrets.
So you mentioned cults, which I'm a big fan. I'm not a big fan of cults, but I'm a big fan of like the idea of, I watch all the documentaries and I read all the books. And so
would you get sucked into a cult, Jenny?
I
or have you?
I find them, my parents were sort of involved in like a Jesus-y cult.
Right.
Yeah. But by the time I was kind of old enough to realize, like, oh, women aren't allowed to talk, and women can only wear dresses and they can't wear pants, and they, like, right about, when I started to realize this seems kind of wrong, they were like, you know what, we made a mistake. We're gonna go away from that. So thank goodness.
Right,
Although I do
right.
still wear dresses all the time now that I think about it. I bet that
It's
cult
it. We never, it takes a lifetime.
they're still
Yeah.
up. Um, the so yes, I absolutely think that I would, because I find it a very comforting when I hear about the cults where they're like, you just give up all your stuff and you go live and you just like wear the same outfit every day and it's really comfortable. It's always just some like caftan kind of thing. And you just have like, here's your simple thing to do today is just like, work this garden or whatever.
Right.
And whenever I see stuff like that, I'm like, I totally get it. I totally get how somebody would be like, oh, I don't have to make decisions for myself. Oh, I don't have to, everything is taken out of my hands. I can see how that would be compelling. Is it something, have you ever been in a cult or been?
Yeah, I mean, I've been drawn to many, whether it's spiritual practices or utopian systems, alternative schools, and some workplaces, maybe even a little bit of blogging. The idea that, oh, we figured out how to have community or a way of living that is better and closer and connected. All those things always interest me. Um, so I think, I mean, utopias, there's a fine line between a utopia and a shit show, it's all in how can you pull it off. And so, yeah, I'm pretty vulnerable to them. I've never joined an MLM, I don't think. But because I think that's a whole different financial thing. But yeah, the idea of definitely living away off grid with a small group of people who you trust and love, that definitely appeals to me. I would probably fall for one tomorrow if someone had a nice piece of land and it seemed nice on the outside. I'd be like, get me in the van. It's got to be better
Exactly.
than this.
Yes. I recently I found this island in Scotland that was for sale, and there wasn't anything on it. It was just like this tiny little island, and there was like a part of me that I was just like, what if we built a house there, and then my parents could live there, and
Yes.
Haley could live there with their future partner, and my sister can come and live there, and it would just be all of us on one island. And I was like, oh, I think I just made a cult. Um, I think
And
I
I would
just
follow you there, Jenny, if you bought a big enough island for other people to bring their, I don't know, like their little caravans, and like imagine a fire pit, and like everyone would leave everyone alone, but then at night we come and tell stories or read what we've written. That sounds great. I'm there. See, I'm in a cult already.
see.
I mean,
Okay, get your
I've
RV,
been in your cult
start
for a
driving to
long time.
Scotland, and we're all going to meet. We're going to converge in Scotland. I'm sure this is fine. This is all
It's fun. It'll work out great. It's going to be good. But I can see in the chat people have better boundaries than me, and definitely we have to promise them the right kind of food in this cult. Well, so if you've watched all the cult stuff, you need a good lieutenant. You need a secondhand person who will, so you can do the wise, good stuff, and you need someone to come in and actually, So I'll be that. I'll be the lieutenant, and I'll make sure they have the food they want up front,
Oh
so
my
that they get
God.
committed. So don't worry about that.
That would be so good, because I would just be like, you guys, guess what? We have egg sandwiches, and they're all toasted bread with mayonnaise. And they'd be like, what? I'd be like, no, everybody doesn't love that. We don't all love that.
We already have a sacrament. It's all like we're halfway there.
That's like our drink of me and live forever, but instead it's eat my sandwich and live in Scotland.
But then by like the second month, you'd be like, no, you have to eat it this way, my way. And we'd all be like, oh, I don't really like it that way, but I will. That's when it starts to get messy. And I love that. I love that phase.
Oh
and I also love people who have big ideas but can't like make them happen. Because I think that happens a lot. Just a lot. So
yes, yeah.
Probably that would happen to us too. Maybe not.
Yes. So I love how you covered this in the book, because when I first started reading it, I was like, oh, it's like this commune, and then I was like, oh, this is a little culty. And then I went a little further and I was like, oh, this is real culty. And then I was like, run. Oh my God. It's so and it snuck up on me in the same way that I think it sneaks up on people who are involved in cults or similar kind of things. It reminded me a lot of like the Manson family kind of thing, of like the witchiness and like the get rid of Charles Manson, but like the Manson girls, of their like female togetherness and the we're all in, and but then at the same time you're like, oh, there's a little evil under there. Oh, there's a lot of evil under there. So, and I'm going to go ahead and say, spoiler alert, pretty much everybody knows. If you're watching this, you kind of go into it knowing that we're going to talk about the whole thing. So when I read it, when I got to the end of it, I was like, the first time I read it 3 times. The first time I read it, I was like, okay, some of these people are evil, but some of them are just like manipulated. And then the second time I was like, nope, all of the culty people are evil. And then like I just kept changing my mind. How do you feel about the characters?
That's a really good question. Well, I had to write, I mean, I had to write it, or chose to write it, firmly believing that each person believes they're good. Like whether they're good or not in an absolute isn't as primary to me as what do they believe. They all believed they were good and acting in good faith towards their motives or their ideas. So whether they were making that up as they went along to serve a purpose that wasn't ethical, or whether the actual actions were ethical, I tried to reserve judgment from that and have each character fully committed to her own thoughts. And I think we all do harm to each other, even if the actions aren't bad, that what harm is separate from motive. So yeah, I mean, there were selfish motives involved on all of their parts. There were collusion, and sometimes just going along to get along is a crime in and of itself. There's definitely actual crimes. And so I think I have a mixed view on all of them, whether I judge them or not, whether in the end, by the end, they were fully enacting their selfishness or their but some levels that's survival, right? I mean, it's an exaggeration of survival. So I don't know if I think of them as good or evil, but self-motivated and askew. Maybe not grounded in what a good ethics towards other human beings might be.
Right. Yeah. As I was going through, I was like, okay, well, I think this is and then I was like, oh, wait, are they just getting people high so they can murder them? And then did they start?
They would just, yeah, that's definitely not good. That's definitely not good.
That feels questionable.
And I think Jamie wrestled with whether there were points where she was going along to get along, or maybe get something out of it, and she was trying to figure out what level did she want to ignore in order to finally fit in somewhere, or finally have a home somewhere, or get the benefits of the lifestyle that she thought she might enjoy. She was early on trying to figure that part out, which is what delayed her from truly understanding that. So I kind of had fun with that.
One of the things that I thought was most interesting, we did sort of like a Facebook sort of discussion of, here are my thoughts here, and people kind of saying, well, yeah, I think this or I think that. And I thought it was really interesting how mixed it was between the people who were either like, absolutely, I can see this happening. This actually reminds me of a cult that did exist in Florida. This seems so, true to life in a way when you look at the ridiculous, bizarre, organizations that exist and the things that people exist and how far they go. And then other people who were like, there's no way this could possibly happen. There's no way somebody wouldn't question this. And I think it says a lot about us, about, that each of us have different levels of what we question, and whether we want to believe the best in people, and how much we want to purposely not see, and how easily we can be manipulated, even if you're not in a cult. I mean, we're all manipulated all the time by all sorts of different things. So can you talk a little bit about that idea of manipulation?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is also reflection. I mean, there are times that I reflect in my past of things I was sure I knew, and then in a few years later, you're like, oh, wait a minute, think that you talk to someone who had a different experience and you're like, wait a minute, maybe did I perceive that differently, or did somebody make me view it in a certain way? So I'm always interested in how do we shape the thoughts of others just by how we frame it. And families do that a lot, I think. And so I specifically wanted characters who were separated from their family, so they had more freedom to create this altered reality that manipulated others, but also nobody grounding them. Both sides are good, both are bad. But I think the time that we've just been through in media and history, we've really seen that we can all be very easily manipulated. We almost want to be, for what you just said, it provides an ease of structure. When there's so much information, someone limiting that in some way or framing it in some way is comforting, and making up theologies that might feel like climate change is coming, but oh, it's okay because you believe the monkeys will save you if you do these things. It sounds crazy, but on the other hand, people are thinking like a lot of things out of comfort. It's terrible to try to process all this information at once without some filters. So it's easy for someone to step in and provide this really messy filter, I think.
Yes. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And I think it is interesting the more that you look at, there are times when it's interesting that you brought up blogging, because there were times even in, the blogging world where I was like, oh, you want me to sign a pledge, and we're all going to sign a pledge together, and we're all going to have this, or that idea of group think of like, if everybody is posting this thing, we all have to post this thing. And it's so hard sometimes to say, oh, I want to think for myself, and is that okay, and am I following the right people, or should I not? And it's a constant question, I think, if you're a human.
And it's also like not really financially rewarded often in the world. Like you're labeled as a whistleblower or an outcast. And so there's a lot of pressure to go along to succeed at a job, or to get into a sorority or the school that you want to go to, or to play whatever game your profession offers you. There's so much of that. And usually you don't even understand the ladder until you've already fallen down it. Unless someone has guided you. Well, who's going to guide you? If you're a person who doesn't have a guide for that particular system, you're super vulnerable to someone coming in, or just to anyone giving you something. So I see that all the time. And I think specifically finances are a big part of it. I think for Florida, class is a big issue that nobody really knows how to confront or navigate. And I think it's getting more torn apart as each year goes on. The divide between the people who have money in this state to have property and development, and the people who don't and literally can't afford to live on a server's or tourism income check. That chasm is bigger and bigger, and it's creating all kinds of strange situations.
It is, and hard to navigate. I often wonder how many things later I will look back on myself and go, oh, that was kind of fucked up. Because you look at like even things that you believed, or things that you were like, oh, I'm whatever this term is, or this group, or this whatever, and like, this is what I am, and this is a part of me. And then you get a little older and you're like, oh, what the fuck was that? Why was I involved in that? Why? And I think it's very easy for us to say like, oh, I'm away from that. I'm away from that like culty Jesus thing. I'm away from the bullshit Southern pride. I'm away from, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm sure there's all sorts of stuff that now I'm like, this is me and I'm this. And later I'm going to go, oh, I maybe should have questioned that more. I don't know,
Yeah, it's ongoing, right? It's all part of self-development and inquiry, or I don't know. It interests me a lot. Or maybe there are people who have much better boundaries than I did, or much less dysfunction in their life, and they're like, okay, this isn't hard. So I think that's part of it too. I mean, I have terrible boundaries. I've had a lot of therapy, but still have very terrible boundaries. So, but you know, some of us have to get by with all that. But I definitely exaggerate it in order. I think I exaggerate it in two ways in order to make fictional life happen, and one is in a fun way to make it enjoyable, because actually a lot of cults have a lot worse dark stuff happening, and I wanted to explore the themes without having, you know, some of the more abusive stuff that does interest me in a documentary, because I want to understand it, but didn't want to write a fictional book. I didn't want to write a book about it, and so there's a lot of ways to play, you know.
Yes, yeah, and I really enjoyed this way of looking at it, and in particular because so many of the cults, I mean, probably definitely the majority of them, you know, delve into, you know, sexual abuse and child abuse and that sort of stuff, and so I really liked that this was more cerebral, and I didn't. It wasn't as hard to read, so I'm very glad that you went that way. It was still hard to read sometimes, where I'm like, Janie, you idiot, what are you doing? Stop it! You need a mother.
And I actually sometimes I can argue it both ways about what was happening with her and Tiara in the book, because, you know, I initially wanted it to be confusing, and then I ended up getting confused, and so I know which ways I slanted it at different times, but I think I could argue it both ways, that it was a burgeoning relationship that couldn't happen in that situation, or that it was 100% manipulation, or that it was what often happens between people, which is a little bit of both, and very confusing to people to figure out, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that is how a lot of manipulation happens, because there's a little bit of flirtation, or is there, or a little nurturing, or is it?
Yes, because I mean, whether it's for good or for bad, flirting is manipulation. I mean, it is.
It is. It's
intense.
Coaxing someone to get to know you better at the very most benign, hopefully, level, right?
Exactly. You know,
or we're just vibing. Maybe
right,
we're
exactly.
Vibing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me. I have terrible boundaries.
At the end of this, we actually start a cult. You guys, this is the long con. We actually into this 12 years ago at Blog Her. We planned this at a bar, and we were like, this is how we're going to start our cults. And this is
the long game. The long game. Your platform is finally ready. It's not really a bookshop. It is, but
exactly. It's not at all. It's not.
You guys have a website. Send them the link now. Send them the link.
Yeah, you guys you're all going to get your t-shirt. It's going to say, I can't remember what the thing was, mayonnaise on your eggs, whatever.
It's going to be so great though, because this group of people that you have gathered is amazing. I mean, I'm not joking.
Oh my God, for real. They're absolutely fantastic. And oh my God, like it, saved me over and over and over again, and saved the bookstore. I was going to say something, and it felt like it was really an interesting thing. Damn it. What was it? What were we talking about?
Relationships and
Tara. Okay. So Tara, I loved that each one of the characters had their very specific personalities, and you could really tell, like, okay, they all have their own motivations, they all have their own way of speaking. They loved all of it. I had a really hard time with Tara because I related to her so much, it made me uncomfortable. I loved that she was always like this mediator, middle person, and it felt like she was doing so much work to try to just make everybody happy and be like, okay, all right, yeah, this is great, this is wonderful, and Dagmar really means this. I know they said that, but she really means this, and just like bending over backward to try to smooth everything over. And then at the end, I was like, the first time I read it, I was like, okay, but that's not her personality, because she basically just snaps. And I realized that's exactly what I do when I get to the end of my rope, and I'm just like, fuck this. I don't even care anymore. I'm exhausted. You guys don't deserve all the work that I'm putting in to making sure that everybody is is happy and everybody, and I'm just like, just go, I don't care anymore. And I both loved it, and also I kind of hated it because I felt very seen and not in a good way. And thanks a lot, Deb.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, that's a female patterning, right? We're taught to and become experts on everyone and everyone else's goals, and not even know if we're doing good or bad, because we think we're doing good in helping them reach their goals or helping them be happy, one or the other. But we have to be experts on them in order to make that happen. So it's just all this psychological work that has to be done to be that nurturer. And so she's amazingly good in taking care of people, but she also was complicit, because if she hadn't been doing all that, none of the other problems would become as big as they were. She's a power that's never recognized, but she was holding it all together also, and luring Jamie into complicity.
Yes. So, okay, one of the parts that was one of my absolute favorites was afterward in the when Jamie was looking through the comments on the YouTube video, and all the people who were like, clearly those are puppets, or shopped, and this is all obviously it's a deep fake, and it was so real. I could not stop laughing, because it absolutely, that is exactly what would have been on all of those, because everything that looks the most ridiculous, everybody assumes is not true, and everything that is not true, people are very likely to go like, oh, sure, okay, JFK is coming back from the dead, to go, no, that makes sense. So I loved that lovely little touch of everyone in the world is insane, and you can't trust anybody's perspective.
I had fun with that. I know you deal with that. You have people arguing with you about your own life, right? I mean, you write a memoir and people are like, well, just because I said I don't want to, let's pretend this never happened, doesn't mean it didn't happen, right?
There's a lot of stuff that I wrote about where there's some stuff that I've written about that I've deleted or saved for later, because I'm like, people wouldn't believe it was true. And then there's some things that I could only write about after I found pictures of it, like especially my childhood stuff of, my dad's armadillo racing championship ring, or the, raccoons that we dressed that lived in the house. Yeah. I mean, because you'd be like, oh, yeah, sure you did, until you see this raccoon wearing jams standing in front of this magazine reading about Kirk Cameron, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's a vibe.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. It's amazing.
Oh.
I bet there are things you've had to leave out. I want to read that.
Oh my God, it happens a lot. It's one time I was at a reading, and Victor was there, and I was like, oh, Victor's there in the back. And so this guy walked up to him and goes, Victor, I just wanted you to know you're my favorite character. And Victor's like, I'm a real boy. Like, I'm not a character. I was like, you're a character. You're a character.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. I was like, the other day, I was like, I mean, I like writing memoir and essay, and it's always interesting, but I kind of feel like I tend to write sort of the same thing over and over again, because it's like, it's me. And I was like, there's never like any murders or anything. And I was like, I think that there should be murders. And Victor was like, you write memoir, like, don't.
Let's pivot to fiction, though. I would love that. Let's do that.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Not enough murders.
Not enough murders in your memoir.
Dateline.
That's your title. Not enough murders in this memoir.
Not enough murders. It's so good. That's my next book. Oh, I can't wait. Okay, so one of the things that I also really enjoyed was the fact that that Jamie, in some ways, was sort of an empty slate, in that I could kind of put myself in. But she also had some moments that were so strong and beautiful, like the saving the pelican, and working with B to try to to make sure that she was safe, and the fact that she was in the primate cage, and the thing that everybody was talking about like, that's the that's the be all end all, is to be chosen by them, to not be bitten, and to not, and they're, and like, that's literally, she was the peak. She could have been the queen of the cult if she wanted to. She did it all. And still was like, oh, this is fucked up. I'm not going to, I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to turn around. I'm not going to listen to my brother. And I loved the fact, I didn't see that coming until quite a bit toward the end. What was, because when I read it, I was like, okay, so is Wolfie the mastermind, or is Sorry the mastermind? And I kept going back and forth. I think my final one, I was like, I think Sorry is the true mastermind here. But what were your thoughts in the book?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. Thank you. Loving that character so closely. That's, wow, what a gift from you. Thank you. Yes, I think I would agree with that. I think they all were coming in a patchwork quilt way, where they all had their own hopes for what they either wanted out of community, or what was left from the one they were with before, or circumstance or opportunity that they saw. But I think I would see it that the way you described it, that Sorry saw herself as a leader, wanted to be the leader, and was the one stitching together the random philosophies, and that the people, and trying and desperately wanting the people around her to rise to that occasion, to get it and to do something with it. And she felt kind of alone in the group project, that they weren't pulling off to the best of, that she wishes they could help her pull off. I think I would describe it that way. But I think I had to, from each character's point of view, see it that they thought they were the center. Dagmar thought her ideas about the monkeys were the center, and the other stuff she just had to do to be able to do that. And Tira thought having a community with people who could live beautifully on the land was the point, and the other stuff she just had to do in order to go along to make something happen on that land. So, and then we didn't get to meet the brother as much because he receded, and I wanted that on purpose for the women to have their different goals and agendas at forefront.
Yes, I was very glad about that, because when he showed up, I was like, oh, don't let it be that a guy's in charge of this whole thing. And no, yeah.
And he took all, and I wanted him to be not, she's the one who, that was her land, and felt a responsibility for it, as screwed up as she was about it. She felt something about it, whereas he comes and goes.
Yes. Let's see. So we have a couple of questions. Let's see. So Lindsay says, it makes so much sense that you have lived in the woods. I loved the lush descriptions of the Florida jungle. Did you go back to certain places for inspiration? Did you write it from memory?
I did go back. I really like to actually visit places and actually write in them, which might just be an excuse. Like, it's a great distraction to have to drive before one has to work, but I love actually going, and I love Central Florida. So it was like no hardship for me to go back to the places that I really love. And the only conflict I had about that is I kind of hate for other people to know that there's more to Florida than Disney. There's so much that's great, and I kind of don't want to screw it up, but it's probably too late. So, and I'm not that powerful. So, but yeah, no, I definitely went back and stayed at a few places and wanted to remember, but also some of it was memory or photos.
Well, it was really well done, to the point where actually I didn't even think that Florida looked like that. The only time I think I've ever been in Florida was Disney, and for like conferences and things. So it's just like plain conference building. And reading it, I was like, oh, this is like the Amazon. This is the jungle. I didn't know there was like this wild. It was fantastic. It had a really gothic feeling to it.
Oh, thank you. I love that atmosphere of Southern work in general, but Florida, I think, has a specificity to it that I hope to share. It is beautiful, and it's a beautiful way to live outdoors. It really is. Even you get past the heat and you get into a kind of a connection with everything. It's a little prehistoric feeling. Some of the plants with the ferns and the oldness of some of that feels old in a way that other places don't.
And you have literal alligators who are.
Yeah, that helps. The snakes. My poor copy editor, she showed me the list of things she had to look up. I'm like, I'm sorry.
It was good. Let's see. I felt like Wolfie and Tara were two of the most manipulative characters because they used their love as a weapon. I felt like Tara didn't ever care for Jamie like she led on, but my question is, did Wolfie ever really care about Jamie, given that she was his sister? Did he bring her with good intentions, or was he always manipulating her?
Yeah, I think those are the two questions, the two polarities that I played with, and I don't think Jamie knows. I think that's going to haunt her in the way that sometimes looking back at people, it haunts me. Like, okay, bottom line, they hurt me, but I don't know if they are sociopath, if they meant to, if they were doing the best they could do at the time, or if I'm screwed up, I think that he was an opportunist. He left when he could, and when he saw that she needed help, I think he was motivated half and half because that he had an affection for her, and half because he saw she was someone who could come in and help them. He was motivated, seeing people as material that he could use. So I think that came out at the end. They were very willing to sacrifice her. So it couldn't have been much coming from much heart.
Do you feel like, do you feel like intention matters, or just that action matters?
Yeah, I think intention does matter, but I don't think it changes the outcome a whole lot. I think we all can mangle things pretty well, even with good intentions. And things can turn out well with bad intentions. They just didn't have, unless murder. I mean, murder is not no one's gonna be like, that worked out.
Like, well, it turns out
Cannibalism, that worked out.
Hitler, so
Yeah.
I killed him on purpose because that was future Hitler, and you don't know, might have been future Hitler, probably not, but maybe. Yeah. I've read so much about the ideas of intentions, and there's a lot of people who say that intentions don't matter, that in the end all that matters is action, and I really struggle with that, because to me, I think intention, even if something goes really wrong, if somebody does something bad to me and I know they didn't do it intentionally, it makes a difference to me. And I've read, I mean, like, my therapist is like, it really shouldn't make a difference. I mean, if somebody harmed you, they harmed you, and she's right, but at the same time I'm like, yeah, but if I can look and say, well, but they didn't mean to, they were just fucked up too, that's hurt people. And she's like, yeah, but really you're just kind of manipulating it in your mind and trying to make it easier to accept that there are people that hurt you. And I'm like,
right. Where your boundaries come in. Right. Yeah, I know. And it's like state of the art. I really do believe in state of the art. We can only do the best that we can do at any given time. Like, and we learn more. We learn how someone needs to be cared for by us or identified by us, and we didn't know that at one point, and now we do. So at what point do we have a responsibility for learning and growing or working on our own garbage so you don't hurt people with it? All that is like an ongoing circular snake eating its tail thing for me. But I do think intention matters, and I think that's where forgiveness comes in, because there are some people that deserve fully for all that to be held, and there's some people who don't, because they weren't trying to do better, or they really were trying to do wrong. That that's what we have to sort out all the time.
Yeah.
And even about myself, like, and that takes a lot of honesty. Like, was I really being the best I could be in that moment? And what could I do better?
Yeah. That is really interesting, because until you said that, whenever I think of intentions, I think of other people's intentions, and I try to use that to be like, oh, it's less hurtful if I can say, oh, they did it accidentally, or they were in a bad place. But I wonder how much of that comes from me, because I feel like even if I fuck something up or I hurt somebody, I'm never intentionally doing it. And so maybe that's just a manipulation I'm giving myself. to be like, oh, I can forgive myself because I was doing the best that I could, and I was taught wrong or whatever. You're doing therapy on me, Deb. How dare you?
I mean, I don't know. That's why we have to get around the campfire. That's why we have to live off grid, because we got to sort it all out. But yeah, it's interesting. The worst is when you take accountability for something or cut slack for something, and then the other person says, "Yep, that's right. You were screwed up," and they're like, so that I know is wrong.
Yes, yes.
Like, but if everybody's trying to work on their intention, but sometimes it's not even enough. It's just not enough, and we, someone will come in. I don't know what percentage of the world is a psychopath. I don't remember. It's
4%.
It's a decent number, right? So we can all be a mess, and then that one person swipes in, and you're like, oh, great.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not going to get the serial killer and be like, but think about your intentions.
Exactly. So
oh, you cured me. You cured me.
Let's spend a lot of time trying to figure this out, right? So I don't know. That's why I stick with the animals. Stick with the monkeys.
Exactly. How many of the monkeys are psychopaths? We don't know.
Oh my God, Jenny, I never thought about that.
I've ruined monkeys for you.
Never thought about that. You're
oh my
right.
God. I've ruined
I
it.
have known some crazy animals, so you're right. Oh my God. We're not safe anywhere. That's why I'm going to the museum.
Yes.
Just by myself, and like a taxidermy woolly mammoth and meat.
Or you can meet me in Scotland.
Oh, right. I forgot. That's a better plan.
That's better,
All
right?
good people working it out with 8 sandwiches.
Tracy said, I just wanted to tell you, and I totally agree. I just wanted to tell you how much I loved the use of your web content creation and editing. It was such a good way to bring the voices in the story and inject humor for those of us that have had to track changes with others. Amen. Oh my God. And I'm speaking on behalf of my editor, who it always is like, you're not in track changes. You're not in track change. What are you doing? This is not how this works. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was fun, because we have all worked on group projects, man.
Yeah, that was such a smart way of seeing their different personalities and their different, you could see their motivations, and you could see, and it really was funny too. Like, so often it was just like, oh, so good. So final question, what is next? What are you working on now?
I'm happy with fiction. I'm really enjoying working on fiction. So I'm working on another novel, and we'll see, take it from there.
Very nice. Awesome. Okay.
So I will need some quiet time in Scotland, because I have to work in quiet, but I'd love to share as it goes around the fire. I'm really obsessed with this fire, aren't I?
I know.
I don't know that I should have put that in the book.
It'll be like Mary Shelley every night, when she would be like, let me tell you Frankenstein, and
then if it's crap, I can just throw it right, and you're like, Jenny, throw that in the fire.
Exactly.
I don't want to see it again.
Oh, well, this was fantastic. Oh my gosh. I loved this. This was
Thank you for talking with me.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of like the old days when you'd meet somebody at a party, and you'd end up like in a corner, and you just like have these long conversations, and you'd be like, I don't even want to be at this party anymore. This conversation is, and that's exactly what this felt like. So thank you for being here, and thank you for everyone who joined in and made this fun. This was fantastic.
Thank you to your to this amazing group. It was so sweet to be read this closely and attentively and with kindness. I really appreciate it.
It was fantastic. It was wonderful. I can't wait to read the next one. I expect to get an arc whenever it comes out. And then for all the fantastic strangelings, The Fortunes of Jaded Women is it already at your house? Is it coming to you? I can't remember what date it is. If it's not already at your house, it's probably in the mail. Yours is hardcover and beautiful, and you're really gonna like it. And let me just tell you, because I was a little overwhelmed when I first opened it up and I saw, because you're gonna see this little genealogical kind of thing with all of these women. and about half of them have more than half of them have Vietnamese names. And you might look at it and go, that's too many people. The author does an amazing job of where you don't have to remember and be like, wait, who's this? Who's that? Who's that? So don't worry about it. Just go into it and read it. It is beautifully readable. It is so funny. It is grief and zaniness. And it's one of those books where, like, as you read it, you see it as a movie in your head. So enjoy. And we've completed our, I don't know what this is, 30th. I'm going to say 30th. We've completed our 30th Fantastic Strangelings meeting
Amazing.
thing. Yay! So thank you to everyone. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank
for
you, everyone.
doing all
Thank
this.
you.
Yes. Bye, everybody.